Hi, my name is Brandon and I'm an alcoholic and addict in recovery. I was reading this morning in A New Pair of Glasses by Chuck C. And it's at the end of the book. There's a question and answer section from the talk that he was giving that this text was taken from. And the question that someone asked him was, upon waking with negative thoughts, how does one establish a relationship with God? And Chuck gives kind of what to me was a little bit of a complicated answer. I'm not quite understanding everything he said. I need to reread it. Um, but it reminded me of a problem that I had in early recovery that I wanted to speak to because I don't think I've ever covered it in these videos. And so when I first came into recovery, I experienced this waking with negative thoughts. And I was having a really tough time with it. Before I went into treatment for my addiction, I was waking up every morning in such a negative headspace that I had trouble getting out of bed. I was crying every morning. I was frustrated, irritable. I could not get out of the doom and gloom aspect of life that I was living at that time. And so when I went into treatment and I was at a residential treatment center, I carried those feelings and emotions with me, even though, I thought those emotions were tied in with stress around things like work and the hubbub of getting ready in the morning. And of course, those stresses were removed when I went into residential treatment. I wasn't working. I didn't have anyone but myself to get ready in the morning, and I just had to walk down the hall for a meeting. So I didn't understand where that negativity was coming from, and I didn't know how to get rid of it. And I tried to think my way through it and tried to think my way out of it. And this was the first in a series of lessons for me that thinking your way out of negativity is really not very helpful. You have to act your way out of it. So I talked to people at the treatment center that I was in, and the first piece of advice that I got was to wake up and before I even put my feet on the ground, pray. Now, this was a time when I still hadn't established a relationship with my higher power, which I consider to be the living universe, is what I refer to it as. Um, and so prayer was something I was familiar with from my childhood, but not something that I had practiced much recently. But I went ahead and took the advice, and I prayed, and they were very simple prayers. But the act of doing something besides getting inside my own head first thing in the morning started to make a difference. And it helped me to start to establish a relationship with a higher power, which I do feel like with the AA program is a very necessary part of the program. Um, if you are not in AA and you are not, don't like the idea of a higher power, another action you could perform first thing in the morning is mindfulness meditation. You could get up and first thing really work on some breath work, breathing, mindfulness, and do some kind of meditation using an app like Headspace, for example. And the important thing, though, is to take some kind of action for yourself, some kind of action to to help you not stick around up in your head. Um, the other thing that I did that I really was not a fan of at first, and still feel really awkward if I ever do this, was affirmations in the mirror. And this was from one of the counselors at the center that I was at told me that I needed to wake up and kiss the mirror. I needed to quit being so emotional. I needed to quit being down on myself, and I needed to get in there and talk about the good things and what good was going to come of the day and that kind of thing. So I worked with another counselor to develop some affirmations, some personal affirmations that made sense to me, that ran counter to the negative thought patterns that I had developed. And I wrote them down, went through a exercise of writing them all down 5 times, and then would stand in front of the mirror in the morning and smiling happily at myself, I would say those affirmations. I don't know what mechanisms in the brain work to make this an effective tool, but it was an effective tool for me. It was something that I did for several months right after I got sober. It was very helpful for me through some very scary times in my life to take a few minutes to stand in front of the mirror, to smile at myself. And just that action was powerful, smiling at myself. I usually, when I looked in the mirror, I was kind of scowling at myself those days. And I didn't know it until I forced myself to stand there and smile and saw how awkward it was. But as time went on, that smile became more natural. And as time went on, I came to expect to see myself that way in the mirror. And I started looking at myself with more kindness, more compassion. And I would never have gotten to that point had someone said, look, take a chance on what seems like a corny exercise and go say some nice things about yourself to yourself while you're looking at yourself. These two actions, prayer and affirmations, really were helpful for me to get out of the mode of waking up with negative thought patterns. Now, it's something I have to practice every day. I'm a year and 8 or so, 7, I don't know. I'm a little over a year and a half into my recovery. And I still wake up negative some days. And sometimes it'll go on for several days. And so every day I have things I do first thing in the morning to try to help with that aspect of my thinking, because it is something that I have to practice on. It's something that I have to address every single day. It doesn't go away. So the important thing to realize is that if you're waking up in the morning with negative thoughts, if you're waking up in the morning with negative emotions, it's difficult to think them away. You have to act in order. You have to act counter to them. If you wake up and you just want to lay in bed, then the best thing you can do for yourself is get out of bed. If you wake up and the first thing you think is what a terrible person you are and that you're not good for anything, the best thing you can do is go and look at yourself in the mirror and tell yourself the opposite, which is the truth. You are good for something. And so those are the kinds of things we have to look at, because so often in our lives we try to think and logic our way out of these kinds of thought patterns. And really, some kind of action is the best prescription for those problems when they come up in our lives. That's all I've got for today. Hope you have a great one, and I'll be back here tomorrow with more.